Good morning, friends. It is so good to see you all today. Everybody doing well today? That's good to hear. Well, that makes my day. Well, so glad you all could join us today. You have joined us. If it's for your first time, welcome. You've come right smack dab in the middle of this series that we're doing, where we're just essentially looking at family and all the complexities and the intricacies and the ins and outs of family and kind of what that means for our lives. And so we're going to continue that today, and we'll start with where you start when you talk about family. I'm going to just ask you to describe something for me. Could you all just tell me, what is this? Okay, good start. Describe this chair. If I were to ask you to tell me about this chair, if I were to tell me, what is this chair? Tell me about it. Folding chair. Wow, you guys are good. Did somebody cheat and tell you what was going on before you came in? You know, it's a folding chair. It's what color is it? It's black. It's got how many legs? 4. It's got a back. It's got a seat. You know, how many of you have seen a chair before? So none of you are blown away by this fancy contraption here, hopefully. The reason I ask that is because what I want us to understand today, when we talk about family, we're going to talk about chairs and seats a whole lot. And I think what some of us need to hear, what perhaps is the most important thing that I can get across today, or one of the most important is that we walk by a chair every single day, don't we? You know, whether it's at work, whether it's in our homes, whether it's in a store, whatever it is, we pass by these things all the time. And they're these things that we've come to see as mundane and ordinary. But what I would love us to see, and what I hope are at the end of the day, what we see is that there is very few things that are more powerful in our lives than a chair. This is one of the most powerful things that you will see in your life. And I hope at the end of today that we all walk out of here just in awe of what can actually happen through the power of a chair. So as we start with this series on family and this chair and all this good stuff, I want to tell you a story. Because I know some of you, I want to do you all a favor. Some of you probably wake up in the middle of the night and are like, I wonder what Seth does on his Tuesday and Thursday mornings. And I know how important good sleep is, and so I want to tell you that so you can get good sleep. And here's how it goes. So on Tuesday and Thursday morning, my alarm goes off at 4:05 a.m. I go out to my kitchen, I heat up a bowl of instant oatmeal. It's not just any instant oatmeal. It can't be the apple or cinnamon stuff. I don't like that. It's the maple brown sugar. That's the only kind of oatmeal a person should eat. Now, we've covered that. So I get my instant oatmeal, I eat my instant oatmeal, and then I get some sort of form of caffeine. If it's coffee, it's tea, it's one of those energy drinks, I don't know. It's whatever it is. It's a caffeine, I'll drink it. So then I get in my car and I drive down to Ina and Thornydale. And I go down there because there's a gym down there. And at that particular gym, it's a CrossFit gym, and at 5 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I coach a CrossFit class at this CrossFit gym. Makes sense so far? We all tracking? Excellent. Now, what you need to understand is that people that go to a 5 a.m. CrossFit class, those are a different type of people, right? Like their brain's wired a little bit differently. It's kind of, it's a thing where, it's no sane person does burpees before sunrise. I think that's just like it's in Proverbs. Go look up at Proverbs later, and it says, don't do burpees before sunrise because something happens. But these people do it. Like, this is a special breed of people. This is a band of brothers. They are a special group of people. And so every Tuesday and Thursdays, I spend my morning with them. Now, I want to tell you about this couple that was in this group, Joe and Jamie. And Joe and Jamie, at the beginning of this month, they moved across the country. I think it was to one of the Virginias, West Regular Virginia, whatever it is, one of those Virginias. Yes, it's called Regular Virginia. People, look on a map. They moved across the country. And before they moved, they sat with me and they said, there's something really important that we want to do, that we want to have happen before we move. And they decided, they had been together as a couple for about 10 years or so, but they decided that before they moved, they wanted to make this official. They wanted to officially get married. And they knew that I was a pastor, and they said, we would love, because we know you and we love you, we would love for you to do the ceremony. I was like, this is great, I love this. So where's it going to be? What time? What are we going to do? And they said, well, you know what? We want to do it at the 5 a.m. class because those are the people that we love, and those are the people we want to share this with, and we want to surprise them. And so we made this whole plan. I was like, this is great. I love this. I don't even have to wear a tie. This is gonna be awesome. So we made this plan. We're on the last class that they were gonna be at before they moved. We would have a wedding, but we weren't gonna tell anybody. We told the gym owner because I thought it would be important that she knew, because she's like, why aren't you doing a class? It's because we had a wedding and all that good stuff. So we told her that. And then we didn't tell anybody else, and we made some plans. And so we get there, 5 a.m. arrives. I'm all hopped up. I didn't even need caffeine this morning. I was great. And so I'm all hopped up and ready to go. And they show up, and we start it like normal. We don't want to give the secret away. So we go through the warm-up. I lead everybody through the warm-up, say, okay, here's our workout today. It's kind of a two-parter. Here's the first part we're going to do, and I walk us through, and I say, so that's the warm-up. Any questions? And I'm like, there's a second part to it, but we'll just talk about it when we get to it. Don't worry about it. Second half today, I don't want you to think about it right now. So we do the warm-up, and we do all that, and we get ready, and I start the clock. For next 20 minutes, everybody in the gym is doing their workout. They're running, they're jump roping, they're push-upping, they're, doing all the things that make you question why you do these things in life. And, 20 minutes is over, and, half is on the floor, half is just, leaning against the wall. And I say, okay, everybody go take a quick cool-down walk. We usually do that. Take a quick cool-down walk. Go and 200 meters or so, just to cool yourself down. When you come back in, we'll talk through the second part of what today is. So they all go out. And as soon as they all leave, I run around the gym like crazy, and I grab all the benches, and I grab all the little boxes that we do box jumps on, and I set up so it looks like there's this semicircle that's all facing the front. It's really, I should be a wedding coordinator, by the way. But I decorate a gym wedding like nobody's business. And I set it all up, and then when they all come back in, I'm like, all right, everybody, go ahead and grab a seat here, and we're going to talk through this portion of the workout. And as they all grab a seat, Joe and Jamie kind of are mingling off to the side, and everybody sat down, and I turn around and I hit play on the iPad, and Ave Maria starts playing over the speakers. That is a song that never has been nor ever will be played in a gym again. And as Ave Maria fills the room and these people are looking at me like, that's not a workout song, Joe and Jamie come up to the front. And I pause and I say, friends, today's second portion is a wedding. These two people here, these two folks that we love are getting married, and they want you to be here with us. And so we just start having a wedding. Everybody's there all sweating in their gym clothes. And, I go through, and they thought we were joking at first, but then I got to the point where they were exchanging rings. They're doing vows, and people are like, oh, what is happening right now? And everyone's crying, but they won't admit to it. They're just like, it's sweat on my face. I'm not really crying, you're crying. And I was like, that's fine, whatever. And so we get through the whole wedding, and I get to say, standing there in my gym clothes, to a sweaty group of people, can I now pronounce to you and introduce to you for the first time as a married couple, Joe and Jamie, and it's beautiful, and everybody's so excited. And Joe and Jamie, they say, thank you so much for coming. And then they say, we have a couple things we want to say. You know what? We just wanted to tell you all, we would have moved 5 years ago. We would have moved away a long time ago if it had not been for you all. Because you all are our family. We did this here and now because we wanted to make sure you all were sharing this with us. And we just want you all to know, even though we're moving away, we expect you all to come see us, to come visit us, to come still be a part of our lives. And anytime you come out to where we're at, there's a place for you in our home. And there is a seat for you at our table. And I think that's profound because that captures the power of a seat and the power of family. Because for them, the definer of family is who has a seat in your life. The picture of a table, and even more so, the picture of a seat is a huge part of understanding what it means to be and look like family. If I were to ask you who your family is, I'm sure the initial response, the knee-jerk reaction would be, well, it's mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, the people that I'm related to by blood. It's the family I'm born into. But maybe if I asked us to pause for a second, I said, whoa, let's rethink that. Let's take a broader view for a moment. Let me rephrase the question. What makes family family? What are the things that the people do in your life that you say, oh, that's family? And I bet maybe it would go beyond simply the people that you're just by marriage or blood. What if, for you, as I've come to learn, family is somebody who is there because they play a significant role in your life? or you get the opportunity to play a significant role in theirs. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, these are people that you view as family. Or maybe for you, family are people who have shown up in your life when you needed them most, when you needed somebody to navigate the difficulties of life with you, or you needed somebody to celebrate the joys of life with you, but they were the people that were there. You know, our family, think about my family, and I have my family that I'm related to, my blood, and I love that family, but I also know that I have family beyond that. Our family has an Uncle Bill, an Aunt Danina, a cousin Caroline, and a cousin Devin. And you see, this family, they're not related to me by blood, but they're my family. They've been with my family from the moment that our family actually started. Bill and Danina, I first met them when I was, a brand new youth pastor here at Cassis so many years ago. They were some of the first people that worked with me. Their daughter had come into middle school and they wanted to volunteer and work with me. And they were just so invaluable to helping me, this young guy who doesn't know what he's doing. I play dodgeball with kids, but this young guy who doesn't know what he's doing, and they helped me navigate through life and were invaluable for me. And then they were there when, they were a part of my life when I met my wife and we dated for all those years. And then when we finally got engaged, Bill and Danina were the people who said, we want to throw you an engagement party because we want to celebrate with you. And they threw this party and all these people were there to celebrate us. When I look at their daughters, Devin and Caroline, I don't just see their daughters, I see my little sisters. People who I have seen grow up, and people who I care about immensely. Bill and Danina are the people in my life who, when my wife and I need some help navigating some things, they're some of the most important people for us to go to. When we have questions about marriage or parenting, we'll go to them, and we found that their advice that helps us out, especially if my wife and I are seeing things oppositely or we're not quite in the same spot. If we are at a disagreement on how to navigate this, one of the most common phrases we should probably schedule dinner with Bill and Danina, I guess. And it's beautiful because when we sit down with them, they usually help us find a spot where we're able to meet someplace in the middle because they're our family. We used to have before COVID, every couple months we would go out and we'd have what we titled the World Supper Club, where we wanted to make sure, we wanted not just to be able to sit with them, but to have full experiences with them. We would go to a restaurant from some culture we'd never been to and eat some exotic food and sit there and share that moment. And the thing that happened there that became true for us and was true for years, and is still true, is that we had a seat at Bill and Danina's table, and it meant the world to us. And it helped guide and steer our lives. And Bill and Danina and Caroline and Devin, they have a seat at our table. They're not blood, but they're family. And what we want to, again, recognize today is that the reality is that it's not as simple as your family is the people that you're related to by blood. The lesson we learned from Bill and Danina, the lesson we learned from Joe and Jamie is that your family, whether you're related to them or not, they're the people who have a space at our table, who have a seat in our lives. Because a seat is one of the most powerful things there is. It takes somebody from being an outsider to an insider. And here's why it's important to realize this. Because no matter what sort of family you come from, whether it's good, bad, in the middle, whatever it is, the fact of the matter is that we all need a space at the table. We all need a seat. And it's these seats that change the way people's lives go. So for my hope for this morning is that we walk out of here understanding that this is not simply some mundane, boring thing that we see every single day, but it is one, again, like I've said, one of the most powerful things we could encounter, one of the most powerful things that could happen to a person's life is to find a seat at a table. Because it gives us a fresh picture of what it means to be family and what it means to be connected into a community that speaks into and changes our lives. So I have some things. We're going to go through the scripture a little bit today and spend our time navigating what does God tell us about this? What is it that makes this so powerful and how do we engage with it? And so there's a place to start. I want to start at a baseline, something where, we just all should probably recognize this before we go any farther. So we're going to start in the book of 1 John. It's a tiny little book in the very back. We'll put it up on the screen as well. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1. And it says this. John is writing to these people and he says, "How great is the love of the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. This is a small little passage, one verse in a small, tiny little book, but it is profound and powerful, and we should not miss that because it captures a thought, an idea that sometimes we just kind of take for granted, or it slips to the back of our mind and it doesn't have the full impact that it always should. And it's simply this, it's that we are part of God's family. I want you to think about that for a second. We are a part of God's family. There's no, John, he states unequivocally, without a doubt. There's no, I don't know, maybe we are, maybe we aren't. There's none of that whatsoever. We are a part of God's family. God knows us, he loves us, he accepts us. He has a seat for us. When you read, we are a part of God's family, I hope that you hear, you have a seat in a chair at God's table. And hopefully that is a powerful thing for you. Because God loves you. He cares for you. He favors you. I know a lot of us can sometimes feel like, you know what, God lets us into the house, but we're more on the periphery. We get to stand back on the side of the room, and the people who get to sit at the table, those are the really good ones. Those are the ones who know how to live life. Those are the ones who nailed it all the way through life. And I know that some of us walked in today, and maybe over anything else, you just needed to be reminded or hear for the first time that this thing is for you. God has a seat at his table for you because you are a part of his family. And I love how John phrases this. It's not simply about, he doesn't say, you know what, you did enough to make your way to God's table. You did enough to make your way into God's family. You know, you earned or achieved child status. Because it's not about doing what God says, but rather about doing life with God. And families do life together. And God says, come sit at my table because I like you, I love you, I favor you, I'm for you. When you realize that you were part of God's family, how did it change your life when you realized that God is for you? Did that do something to you? Did that change the way that you saw yourself, that you saw the world around you, that you started navigating life? How would it change your life? Maybe you're sitting here wondering, is this true? Let me just ask you, how would it change your life if you knew and believed that God is for you? He desires the best things for you. Sometimes it stretches and pulls us in directions we don't always want to go, but he is for you. Here's the important part from this. We all have a seat at God's table. We all are a part of God's family. He simply says, come sit down. And when we can understand, when we personally understand the power of a chair, then we start to understand what that does in the lives of the people around us. And I know that when we start to understand this is how powerful a chair is in my life, I want to see how powerful I can let the chair in my life, my table, be in the lives of others. So we're going to spend the rest of our time together. We're going to go to this moment in the book of Matthew. It's this moment in the whole book where we actually see Jesus model something for us. And what he models for us is this moment. We'll look at three different parts of this moment where Jesus grasps and he models for us, here's the power of a chair. Here's the power of a seat. There's a lot of things in this world that we could consider powerful, but here's the thing that I'm saying is powerful. So we'll start in, where are we going to start? We're starting in Matthew chapter 9. There it is. Matthew chapter 9, and we're just going to go verse 9 to start with. As Jesus went on from there, Jesus had been doing things someplace, and he decided to go move on from there. He saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. And he looked at him, he said, "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up, and he followed him. So we're going to do a quick, brief unpacking here of something here, because there's a thing beneath the surface. If we don't see fully, we're going to miss some of the power of this chair that we've got here. So we are told that Matthew is a tax collector. There is some important stuff to know about tax collecting and what the full implications of this would be. And the first thing of this is that we got to understand that, and we've talked about this before, so we'll go quickly through this. When you were a young Jewish man, you aspired, all young Jewish men, or most young Jewish men aspired to one thing. It was to be a disciple or even a rabbi, a disciple of a rabbi or maybe even a rabbi himself. And so the whole education system in that time was set up to get young Jewish men to that point. And the thing was, is as you started, everybody was there, and then as you kept going farther and farther, it started getting winnowed down and narrow until just a few people were left to become disciples and maybe potentially become a rabbi. And it wasn't as if you just dropped out. What happened is that at some point in the schooling, somebody would come to you, and I want you to imagine this is your dream. This is what you're hoping to see happen with your life. And somebody comes to you and they say, this rabbi comes, this teacher says, man, you are a really great guy. We think you're awesome. We can tell that you love God very much. But to be honest, you just don't have what it takes to be a rabbi. You're just not somebody that we think is going to be able to follow one of us. Essentially, you don't really have a seat here. At this point, you have to go home and figure out what to do. Can you imagine what that would be like in that moment? Imagine what would be going on in your heart. You'd be, I guess I don't measure up. All this thing I've poured my life into, I don't measure up. What is my identity? Am I a failure? What is my family going to think? What is my community going to think? What are they going to see when they look at me? We've all been in that moment before, haven't we? So this is where Matthew's life starts in this direction. And so then we find Matthew, and he's a tax collector. And here's the thing about tax collectors, is that tax collectors were not a popular group of people in those days. A little bit of overview on how tax collecting worked, just to get us to where we need to go. So during that time, Israel was part of the Roman Empire, and we'll have a picture go up of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is a ginormous thing. You can see there, all that orange is the Roman Empire. So you go all the way from Spain, all the way over to Judea and Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And so you've got Rome right there in the middle. And to make an empire function, you need money. And so they would have to levy taxes on these different communities. But how are you going to get taxes from all over the empire? That's a really difficult thing. You've got to create a system for that. You don't just, hope people mail it in or anything like that. So you create this system. And what they would do, this is genius. Who knows? I think it's genius, but it's also just really crazy. What they would do is they would essentially look at the Roman Empire, looked at this empire, and they said, we're going to split this empire up into territories, divvy up the territories. And what we're going to do is we're going to have people bid to become contractors to collect the taxes. And so you would go, if you wanted to do this, you would go and you would say, okay, here's my bid, my offer, the amount of money I'm willing to pay to become a tax collector. Sounds very weird, I know. And so the highest bid would win the job. It's the weirdest job interview ever, but the highest bid wins the job. So then they would essentially, give the taxes that are due to the Romans. And the Romans say, okay, here's your deal. You just go get the money from the people. Don't care how you do it. Just do it. There's no rules or anything like that. No regulations. We're not going to monitor you. Just as long as we get the money that we need, awesome. And so what this did is this created a system that was rife for corruption, right? Rife for you could do what you wanted. And so what would happen is that you would have these tax collectors that would go and they would say, all right, I'm going to collect the money that Rome needs, but since nobody's here to stop me and I've got the backing of those soldiers over there, hey, you owe me actually more than what you thought. You owe me an extra $50. And so these tax collectors started basically stealing from people and becoming rich off of this. Now we get to Matthew. Where do we find him? He's in he's in his booth. He's along a roadside. And so here's one of the ways they did taxes was you basically had to pay a toll tax to use the roads that were in your area. And so what would happen is you would get you're a fisherman or a farmer and you would get your crop or your catch. And you've got this, and this is how you're going to support your family, right? And you got to go to the market that's a couple towns away to sell all this off. And you go and you travel these roads, and you would somehow on the outskirts of a town, never in the town, but on the outskirts of a town, as you're traveling this road, here'd be a toll booth. And you'd have somebody sitting there being like, you need to pay the tax to travel the road. That's what Matthew did. And again, it'd be like, the tax may be $25, but I'm going to charge you $75. And you're just going to have to deal with it. And you can imagine that would not make them very popular, would it? They were despised by their fellow Jews, by their countrymen, by their townsfolk, their community. They were working for the enemy, but they also were taking advantage of their own people. Tax collectors, they were seen as robbers. And as such, they had a particular status in the community, which meant they really had no status whatsoever. If the tax collector witnessed a crime, they would not be allowed to actually testify in the courts about this because they were deemed so untrustworthy and so bad. They didn't qualify as a witness. If they wanted to give money away, give to charity, tithe, give to the temple, the people would say, we don't want it. They could take as much money as they wanted, but they literally could not give money away. Can you imagine that? That's how loathed and despised they were. Essentially, you have no seat with us, is what the people said to them. And here we have Matthew. And because he's a tax collector, he has a seat at no one's table. This is a lot working against you, isn't it? And yet Jesus arrives at this booth and he says, hey, come follow me. This is the guy he calls to follow him. Matthew's failed out of being a rabbi. Matthew has probably created a whole bunch of complexity with his family. They probably don't even talk to him anymore. His community hates him. He has no social, moral, or religious merit in this community. And he has no idea at the same time that somebody's about to arrive that says, I've got a place for you. You know, it wouldn't have shocked anyone if Jesus had walked up to this guy, walked up to Matthew, and he had berated him. He had heaped scorn upon him. He would have shamed him. Nobody would have been shocked, bat an eye at that. But here's what happened. Instead of condemnation, Jesus extends the invitation. And he says, come follow me. Come have a seat. It's this phrase Jesus uses throughout his ministry, and it's essentially saying, join me in this endeavor. Sit at my table. Live life with me. Be a part of my family. Come sit down and feel what it's like to be a part of this family. It's a powerful thing. A seat is something that can take somebody who is loathed by everyone and move them into a spot where they are loved by Jesus and loved by the people around him. Now, next one. There's more to this passage. We aren't stopping at one verse. Verse 10, while Jesus was having dinner. So Matthew starts following him, and then Matthew decides to throw a party. While Jesus is having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. Now, one, God is always making family. That's what the point of that previous little passage was. God is always making family. If there's a second point here, it's that when you actually become a part of that family, you start to act like a part of the family. You start acting like that very family. You see, Jesus makes a space at his table, and the moment that Jesus makes that space, Matthew's eyes get opened up, Matthew's heart gets opened up, and he starts making a space at his table for all these other people. Notice who he invited. He invited the tax collectors and the sinners. These are the people they're the ones who are hard to love. They're the ones where the people are like, you don't have a seat at our table. Go outside the city. Go find someplace else to bug people. They're the outcasts, the difficult ones. And Matthew says, hey, come sit here. You know, I remember, like I said, I was a youth pastor many years ago, and when I first started being a youth pastor, really, I figured my job description was make sure that you play dodgeball at least once a week and, try and throw a bunch of candy out to the kids, get them hopped up on sugar, and then send them home. If you did that, that was a good day of youth ministry. And then you get to do small groups and talk about Jesus, but you got all that other stuff too. Then at some point in being a youth pastor, about 2-3 years in, I realized what it hit me, the weight and kind of what the job of being a pastor is. It wasn't just hanging out with kids, and which, to be honest, that's more than what our youth pastors over there do, so don't tell them I said that or else they'll get very sad. But it hit me what the job of being a pastor is. And it happened one night, 3 a.m. in the morning. That day I was the pastor on call, meaning that just anytime there was anything where if there was an emergency with somebody in our church, if there was something that somebody needed, I was the pastor that got called that day. 3 a.m. in the morning. I get a phone call. On the other end is a hysterical woman, and her name is Donnell. Donnell is telling me she's not in town. She's off visiting relatives, but her husband has just been in a life-threatening car accident. They don't know if he's going to make it. And they've got a couple, extended family members down here, but could somebody from the church please go down and be with them? And so I get my clothes on, I drive down to the church, down to the hospital, and I walk up to the desk and I say, I'm here. And her husband's name is Curtis. And I say, I'm here we have a congregation member, I'm a pastor from Cassis, and there's somebody here who's been in a terrible accident, and the family's asked me to come and be here. And so the receptionist takes me back, and before takes me to the family, she takes me back to where Curtis is. And I don't think I had understood the gravity of it until I walked in there. And there's Curtis, unconscious on a table. And you can tell this is not just a fender bender. This is a life-threatening accident. And it starts to sink in a little bit. And I sit there, I'm like, wow, I did not expect them to bring me back here. I didn't really know what to do. And I said, if you don't mind, to the doctor, I'm going to pray for him. And then, could you take me to meet the family? I think I need to go see them. And so I prayed for Curtis, and then I went and saw the family, and I sat with them, and I prayed with them, and I talked with them. And I didn't know them to start with. And so we just were talking a little bit and chatted about kind of what our church is and all that good stuff, and just wanted to see how they were doing. Because again, remember, his wife and kids were elsewhere. And so finally, this is a long surgery. This is taking forever. So it's something where at some point, we say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and go. But if you all need anything, please call me. Don't hesitate to call me. Let Donnell know anything they need. Call me. And so I kind of tracked this. And Curtis went through surgery, and he recovered as best as you could hope and expect. And I was tracking his recovery. And so not long after this, Curtis shows up, and he says, I want to work in youth ministry. I want to work with the middle schoolers. And this is the cool thing. So he shows up and he says, are there any kids that you like, other people are kind of scared to work with? Are there any of the guys who maybe are a little bit more rambunctious, who have a lot more energy, and maybe they're the types of people, they're the guys that like the other adults are like, I don't know if I can handle that. And I said, yes, they're called 8th grade boys. And we have plenty of them. And Curtis became their small group leader. Curtis, every year he worked with me, he was the guy where if I had some guys who I knew they were going to be rambunctious, I knew that they just had all this energy, that they were a little bit much, but they were still beautiful human beings, and they needed to be reminded of that. I would put them with Curtis, because Curtis let them be that. Curtis loved that. He loved them. He hung out with them. He spent time pouring into them. They still call him today and talk to him today. And he said, I want the ones on the edges. Bring them in, because I've got a place for them in my life. And at one point, there was a kid in his group whose father passed away from brain cancer, and life was just rough in that home. It was difficult for that whole family to deal with it, and that kid needed a space. And so Curtis and his wife and his family actually took this young man in and said, you know what, for a while, a season, you get the seat here at our table. Sit down. And that could be terrifying on one level. But, I think about it, I'm bringing in somebody who's had this experience, and you've got to wonder, like, what do I say? How do I make this better? How do I fix this for him so that he's liking life again? I don't know what to do here. And Curtis just knew, and maybe it was because he'd experienced so much. It's not about fixing, it's just about having a space. And it took me a while to figure this out. It took me a while to think about this. I thought Curtis was a super cool and patient guy. But then I realized there's something more here. It's that through Curtis's experiences, he had realized that there is a God who has a seat for him, and that there's a God who is blessing and grace-filled and loving. And it wasn't like he didn't love God before, but it cast a brand new light at how powerful that seat at that God's table was. And Curtis was constantly looking for ways to help people find that seat as well, constantly looking for ways to turn around and share the grace and the love and the compassion that had been shown to him. And I know people were wondering, why does he always take these kids? Why does he always go with those guys? And I realized it's because Curtis knew the power of a chair. He knew the power of a seat. He knew what it could do to a person and change their lives, because it meant that you were part of this group, this community, this family. And we were for you, and God's for you. If you want to know the power of a chair, look no farther than this very gospel that we're reading. Matthew goes from collecting taxes to sitting in a chair and writing a gospel in the Bible. Let that sink in for a second. Come sit at my table, have a seat. He goes from collecting taxes to writing a book of the Bible. That's a powerful thing. So when you become family, Matthew realizes, I'm going to invite these people because I am a part of this family, and this chair is so powerful, it changed me. I need other people to be changed and feel it as well. Third thing, last little part of this passage here. Go back to our passage. Where were we? Verse 11. So Jesus sitting down, hanging out, having dinner. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners." And the Pharisees are essentially saying, why would you let those people sit at your table? This doesn't make any sense. And what Jesus is essentially saying is that, you know what? It's the people who don't have a table to sit at that need the seats at ours. The Pharisees are like, there's a reason those people don't have chairs at a table. They're not supposed to have chairs, Jesus. And Jesus says, no. It's the people who don't have the chairs, who don't have tables to sit at. Those are the ones who need the seats. See here, this isn't just, when he sits at a table, this isn't just him saying, hey guys, let's grab a meal. When you sat at a table, when you ate dinner, ate a meal with somebody in that culture, you weren't just shooting the breeze. You weren't just saying, oh, this was a nice casual visit. You were saying, this is my people. I am for you. I am identifying with you. I am one of you and you are one of us. This is a place for you permanently. This isn't something where people rotate through. This is yours now. You see, the Pharisees are looking at the people and they're saying, these are people who have it all wrong. Man, they shouldn't have seats. They should be up at the very best leaning against the wall and watching how great it is to have a seat. And Matthew writes this, and Matthew says, and Jesus says, and they look at the people and they see them not as people who shouldn't have seats, but just simply people who don't have seats. People who haven't experienced the power of a chair yet, and they say, well, no. You have to actually the point of a table is to be looking for people who actually need a space at the table. If you're gonna make space at your table, you also need to start seeing the people who need that space. The thing for the Pharisees is our tables are full. Everybody met what they were supposed to do, did what they were supposed to do to make it into our table. We all have a table at each other's house. This is great. There are no more seats because we've got everybody we need. And Jesus says, no, you're missing it. The point of a table is about always having space, about having open seats and inviting people to those seats, because the point of a table is a place where people can sit and be changed and realize I have people, I have a family here because I am a part of this. A chair is one of the most powerful things there is. I was talking earlier this week with Ryan and Glenn about this sermon, and I was sharing them the story about Joe and Jamie. And as I'm sharing this, Glenn, said, he's like, well, what did the people in the gym do that made it so that Joe and Jamie felt like family? What was all the things that they did? How did they involve them? And I thought about this, and I said, well, actually, nothing. It was all Joe and Jamie. You see, Joe and Jamie, when I thought about it, they were the ones that created the space for family. They were the ones that made it. When we had a birthday in the gym, Joe and Jamie were the ones that showed up and made sure everybody got donuts and coffee and celebrated. When somebody would mention, oh man, I've got this project at home that I need to do, whether it was plumbing or cleaning the yard or fixing floors, Joe and Jamie were the ones that were there that weekend doing it. Joe and Jamie, one time we needed a sign hung way up high outside the gym. Joe and Jamie were the ones that showed up and hung it. Anytime we had an event at our gym where the whole gym was invited, Joe and Jamie would be the ones pulling up, whipping out the grill, cooking food to make sure everybody had something to eat so we could celebrate and hang out. You see, we can often fall into the habit of waiting for people to make a space at their table. But what Joe and Jamie show us is that you don't wait, but rather you actually step into making a space at yours. You understand the power of a chair, and you start making space for people at your table. So let me call back. Who is a seat at your table? Who needs a seat at your table? Is there someone in your life that needs this experience of a chair, that needs to know the life-changing power of a chair? Who is that? What does it look like to have them join you at that table? Is there someone who's walking through some difficult moments alone? Is there somebody who has a bunch of great things going on, yet their family isn't there with them to celebrate, and they're trying to celebrate this and enjoy this, but it's all on their own? Is there someone who doesn't have a seat at a table because they've been told who you are isn't good enough? They've been told you're welcome here once you change. You're welcome here once you start to get things right, but until then, there's no seats for you. And what we would say is that to be part of a family is to have a place where you don't have to pretend or perform or conform, but rather it's a place where you get to be you. You don't have to be anybody but you. To get these chairs, these seats, to see the full power of it, you get to be at a place where you don't have to ask the question of, in order to have that chair, what do I have to do? You know what you have to do? Sit down. Just sit down. You see, Joe and Jamie articulated that we were family to them, and that was because they decided to show up and make space at their table in our lives. And the cool thing was that as they did that, it transformed them. And so here's kind of how I want to finish off today, is simply, you know what? I want us all to recognize there are always going to be people around us that need family, that need a space at a table, that need a chair. And I know that as we've been talking, some of you probably have been saying, and I get it, have been saying, you know, what if I don't have a space at a table? What about me? You know, how does this all apply to me? I don't feel like I have a space at a table. And again, I get that. I know that we all are there at certain points. But here's what I want you to hear. There's one thing that you walk away with and remember, hopefully for the rest of your life from today. It's this. When you make family for others, you will always have a family for yourself. When you make family for others, when you have a chair and a seat for others, there will always be a chair and a seat for you. And so go be that. This is why at no point did I ask today, you know, do you have a space at a table? But I asked who has been seated at yours? Who has a seat at yours? Because when you make family for others, you will always have family yourself. And here's the thing that's cool about this. Here's what would be amazing. What's going to be beautiful is we as a church step into this. If we in this community stepped into it and became a bunch of people who said, we know that this is one of the most powerful things there is. Let's use it. Let's invite some people. Let's have people sit in that. Is because when people like you, when a church like this starts to do and start to actually create something, what it does is it creates this beautiful thing that starts to look and feel a whole lot like that kingdom of God that Jesus is always talking about. People find seats and they didn't even know they had them. They didn't even know they need them, but all of a sudden they're sitting it and their life has changed. We become a kind of family where there's healing and goodness and people show up for one another because we said, come sit here. You're family. All you got to do is sit down. And so if you walked in here today wondering if there is a place for you, a seat for you today, we, not just me, we want you to hear that there is always a seat here for you. We love that you're here. So here's my call to us. May we be those who look for the people who need a seat. May we not just look for them, but may we invite them to have a seat at our table. Because when we make space at our tables, when we make space in our lives and create and expand family, and become that kind of family, we become the family that we all need and that we all dream of. And it does something so profound because it's simply the power of a chair. And that's what makes a chair and a seat so important. Let me pray for you guys. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for drawing us in and making us a part of your family and reminding us that we're your kids, that we're a part of family, that we sit at your table, that you are for us, you favor us, you love us. There's nothing that can separate us. And we ask today that you open our eyes to have that same vision, that same passion, that same thing, to find people to sit in these chairs and to feel the power and the life change that happens in them. Make us people who love to expand our family and are always looking for it, and have our eyes open for the people in our lives who don't have a seat so that they can sit with us. In your name, amen. Well, my friends, our time is done here today. But if you came in here today and you are needing some prayer, or if during the service it just struck you, man, I'd love to have somebody pray for me, we have a prayer place right over there with some wonderful people who would love to pray with you and for you, and they would love to just be there for you. We also have our welcome party right over there, where if you are new with us today, I'd love to meet you. We've got some people that would love to meet you if it's your first time, but also we just want to say hey to y'all and welcome you and party with you. And then lastly, you heard us talk about classes and maybe some of the groups around here. We've got some people over there, since classes are coming up, that if you want to talk about how to join some of those classes or groups, we'll be over there as well. So thank you all for coming. I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. Enjoy your day off tomorrow, hopefully, and we'll see you next week.